On March 21, 2021, the Canadian Pacific Railway shook the North American rail industry by announcing their intention to purchase the Kansas City Southern Railway along with its subsidiary Kansas City Southern de Mexico. 2 years and $31 billion later, on April 14, 2023, a ceremonial final spike was driven where the two systems met in Kansas City, Missouri, marking the birth of Canadian Pacific Kansas City, the first single railway company to serve Canada, the United States, and Mexico. In the spring and summer of 2024, the new railway would celebrate its first birthday with the Final Spike Steam Tour. This historic 8,000-mile odyssey across the CPKC system would take steam locomotive 2816 from the company headquarters in Calgary, Alberta, all the way to Mexico City. We begin our journey at Kansas City Union Station. Opened in 1914, this palatial structure once welcomed travelers from all corners of the nation, its grand halls making a striking first impression for new arrivals, or perhaps building excitement for a journey aboard such storied trains as the Super Chief, Southern Belle, Texas Special, or Pioneer Zephyr. Over a century later, Union Station now serves only Amtrak Southwest Chief and Missouri River Runner. But while passenger numbers may have declined, the tracks outside are still busy with an almost continuous stream of freight trains, a testament to Kansas City's continued role as a major transportation hub for the Midwest. In one corner of the station's main hall is a small gallery of paintings and memorabilia from the history of the station and the railroads it served. In the center of the main display case is the very final spike that marked the creation of CPKC just a few miles away at Kanoki Yard. The Final Spike Steam Tour came to Union Station on May 18, 2024. On display was CPKC 9375, a General Electric ES44AC diesel-electric locomotive built in 2012. The 9375 was making its public debut as the very first locomotive to be painted in the new CPKC livery. Stealing the limelight, however, was the Empress herself, Canadian Pacific 2816. Built in 1930 by Montreal Locomotive Works, this H1B Class 464 Hudson locomotive is the last of her kind. Designed to pull fast express trains across the vast Canadian prairies, 2816 racked up over 2 million miles in 3 decades of service before being retired in 1960. She was rescued from the scrap line 3 years later by American businessman F. Nelson Blunt, who placed the engine on display at his Steamtown USA Museum in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Steamtown moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1983, and in 1995 the National Park Service took ownership of the museum and began seeking to cut down on the number of Canadian locomotives in the collection. At about that same time, Canadian Pacific CEO Robert Ritchie became interested in starting a public relations steam program, and in 1998 an agreement was reached for the Park Service to sell the locomotive back to its original owners. The newly restored Empress would travel many thousands of miles more over the next decade. She toured the entire CP system across Canada from Vancouver to Montreal, down into the Midwestern United States to the Twin Cities and Chicago, and even starred in the IMAX film Rocky Mountain Express before being retired once again in 2012. 9 years later, Canadian Pacific CEO Keith Creel promised that if the merger with Kansas City Southern was successful, the Empress would be brought back out of retirement for a tour of the combined system. And on April 26, 2024, she triumphantly steamed out of Calgary once again, this time bound for faraway Mexico. After 2 days of rest in CPKC's Kanoki Yard, 2816 would resume her southward journey on May 21st. Venturing onto former Kansas City Southern rails for the first time, the Empress would race across the farmland along the Kansas border, dipping briefly into the Sunflower State before returning to Missouri and winding through the Ozark Hills into Arkansas. The train would then enter Oklahoma and pass through the Cherokee and Choctaw nations before ending the day in the town of Heavener. With the city behind and open countryside ahead, engineer Jonathan Morris and fireman Justin Tracy get to work and bring 2816 up to speed. Now in Kansas, the train makes a service stop at the town of Pittsburgh. The train must make regular pauses to allow the crew to lubricate the running gear and inspect the locomotive for any problems. Running an almost 100-year-old steam locomotive is a lot of work under any conditions. Running one at track speed for thousands of miles on an active main line is a massive undertaking. This stop also allows for a change of engine crews, and as the train departs, Mike Manwiller takes the throttle with Chris Bialaricki as fireman. The roads following the tracks towards Joplin become packed with people chasing and pacing the train, some of whom are just a bit too eager. Fortunately for the chasers, the train begins to lose speed as it approaches the Ozark Plateau. Leaving the Ozarks behind, the Empress began to pick up speed once again just as the railfan convoy became stuck in a series of traffic lights. This led to a frantic chase as the train entered Oklahoma and the Cherokee Nation.
He still's not here yet.
There it is.
Of course.
South of Sallisaw, the tugboat Captain Tommy Parrish is seen floating a tow of barges up the Arkansas River while 2816 crosses the bridge above into the Choctaw Nation. As the sun sets over Heavener, a crowd gathers to gawk at the northern interloper in the former Kansas City Southern Yard. Meanwhile, exhausted train chasers head to get a bite to eat and a few hours of sleep before the next day of action. On May 22nd, the final Spike steam tour would turn east and climb through the Ouachita Mountains back into Arkansas. Turning south again, it would cross over the Red River and cut across the very northeastern tip of Texas before ending the day at Duramus Yard in Shreveport, Louisiana. It is a deceptively bright morning in Heavener as strong storms are brewing across the plains while the crew prepares the train for departure. Traveling behind the Empress on her long trek to Mexico are two General Motors FP9A diesel-electric locomotives. Both were built for CP's rival Canadian National in the late 1950s and sold to Via Rail when it took over Canada's passenger rail services in 1977. After roughly 20 years with VIA, they would be sold off to short lines before being acquired by CP for use on the Royal Canadian Pacific Excursion Train. A few minutes before 9 a.m., the train is ready to go, and engineer Jonathan Morris and fireman Justin Tracy once again take the controls and lead the train out onto the main line. Leaving Heavener, the train enters the Ouachita Mountains and begins tackling the 1.1 to 1.5% grade up to the summit at Rich Mountain. At roughly 1,600 feet above sea level, Rich Mountain is the highest point on the former Kansas City Southern. At the summit, a trio of light engines, two in the iconic KCS Southern Bell livery, take the siding to allow for the steam special to pass. Running about an hour late and with severe thunderstorms beginning to blow into Arkansas, the Empress flies across the Red River to safety in Texas.
Figure out how I can get out.
Crying out.
At Mooringsport, Louisiana, the railway passes over Caddo Lake. Once the epicenter of a large oil field, it was here that the world's first offshore oil platforms were erected in 1911. The well's long dry, now only fishing boats and pleasure crafts sail under the 110-year-old lift bridge. The train would arrive in Shreveport just a few miles later. With the Empress tucked away from public view in Duramus Yard and little chance of getting ahead of them anyways, our chase ended here. But what a chase it was, covering over 540 miles through 6 states over rails that hadn't seen steam in decades. The 2816 would spend the next day being serviced and letting the crew rest. After another public display on May 24th, the Final Spike steam tour would resume its journey once more, traveling along the Gulf Coast across Texas, entering Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on May 30th, and finally reaching Mexico City on June 4th. Unfortunately, the mood upon the Empress's arrival in Mexico's capital was anything but triumphant. Just 50 miles from the finish line, a spectator would be tragically struck and killed while standing too close to the tracks. Please remember that as cool as trains are, they are also incredibly dangerous machines and overhang the rails by several feet on either side. Remember to stay at least 15 feet from the tracks at all times and never stand or walk on an active rail line, even if you think no trains are coming. No photo or video is worth your life. I'd like to extend a huge thanks to Dominique and Kylinn Hogue and to Timber Rice for providing additional footage for this video. I couldn't have had such comprehensive coverage of the journey without their help. And of course, a massive thanks to Canadian Pacific Kansas City and the CPKC Steam team for putting in the hard work and long hours to make this transcontinental journey a reality. I wish the Empress and her crew the best of luck on their long journey home. Thanks for watching.